Before we begin, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Raycon. Unlike the team being presented, they're pushing to innovate and develop their craft. Wireless earbuds are all the rage. You see them everywhere. The question you're going to ask is, why should I choose Raycon? Simple. They offer one of the best sounds available at roughly half the price of major brands. Allow me to introduce the E25, Raycon's newest and best wireless model. It boasts over 6 hours of battery life, souped-up bass, seamless Bluetooth pairing to many devices, and a sleek look that looks good on even the most unkempt of men. Quality sound, good noise isolation, available in a variety of colors and fit options. It's great for daily life. Celebs like Cardi B, Melissa Etheridge, and the immortal J.R. Smith also agree. Look, you don't want to see this yinzer pretending to show off, so I'll make it up to you. Click the link below or go to buyraycon.com/utree to save 15% off your first order. Once again, thank Raycon for sponsoring this video. That man should never go on camera again. The Charlotte Hornets. You think nothing of them. Why would you? They've only been utterly forgettable as a franchise for the strong majority of their existence. Both incarnations. They are a team with no direction. They're not building for the future, yet they aren't serious playoff contenders. They merely fill a vacuum of forgettability, once in a while showing up to get wrecked by real teams that aspire for more than 35 wins in a season. But mocking this isn't fun. I want to focus on one man in particular, the head honcho who was hyped to be North Carolina's great savior. This man was going to put the Hornets back on the map in style. Behold, the GOAT! Michael Jordan. There's nothing else that needs to be said. The aura behind that name lingers on to this day. He's the gold standard that today's stars are compared to. Yes, LeBron's great and all, but could he have competed in Jordan's era, they still cry? And to answer that, yes, he would have. Talent plays out in any era. However, I'm not here to talk about his playing days. There are thousands of videos already discussing that in detail. Let's dig into his time after the hardwood. Transport yourself back to 1998. Michael Jordan is finishing up what is to be his final season in Chicago. Air Jordan has nothing to prove on the court, but a new hunger fills his belly. The executive realm. Running a franchise. His airness has always felt he's been slighted by the fat cats at the top. Jerry Krause always held him back from his true potential. They wouldn't listen to his best player on personnel decisions. He felt voiceless. His ego wasn't being fed at every moment. That fucking toad did nothing but take credit for his hard work. Where could his next challenge be but in this position? Truly uncharted territory. He wouldn't only prove Krause wrong, he would be better than him in every facet of his job. It would take a year, but Jordan would finally have his chance in the executive branch. The Washington Wizards. The team was awful, deep in a tank for their next savior. It was perfect. He could make the mark of a dynasty that will bring him into the halls of immortality. Of course, even the Bulls weren't built in a day, so this would take time. The Wizards were clay and he would mold them into his own image. Rod Strickland was an injured liability, so he could kindly fuck off. Christian Laettner could thrive on this team, though. The package to get him included their best player in Juwan Howard, but that wasn't important. Jordan has a monumental moment coming up. The Wizards have won the lottery. They will get the first overall pick in the 2001 draft. The ways they could take their franchise are innumerable. Who does he take with this selection? Kwame Brown. A man who would only develop into one of the greatest memes of that decade. The next picks became Tyson Chandler and Pau Gasol. He whiffed. Not that he saw that coming, but the world was put into a frenzy as he would return to the court. Personally, I don't think he ever wanted to come out of retirement, but it was probably part of the stipulation for gaining control of team operations. They help you, you help them. Even with Jordan back on the court, the Wizards still lacked that complementary piece to his legend. Jerry Stackhouse, there's a man who is worthy of feeding him. The price for such talent? Rep Hamilton, who would only go on to be a key contributor to the Pistons championship team in 2004. Even with his aging aura, Washington wouldn't go anywhere. Just mediocrity. Off the court, he would do nothing but shit on the team and the players he brought in. It was all of the ego, but with declining talent. Once he retired for the final time, the Wizards told him to leave and never return. He had felt betrayed again. He did nothing wrong in his eyes. Even though if you look at his transactions, he sucked. He tried to compete but failed miserably. He botched his draft choices. He set the team back years with his moves. He made the team about him. It was justified as he had failed as an executive, but Michael disagreed. He didn't get enough time, he thought. Not to say Washington would be smart. The Wizards would replace Air Jordan with Ernie Grunfeld, which is a punishment they would feel for 15 years. Not exactly freedom. Despite this setback, Michael wanted another chance. He was slighted in Washington. A new opportunity needed the guarantee he wouldn't be merely used as a toy to bring fans to the arena. How about Charlotte? They're a terrible team as well, struggling to find an identity of their own after becoming a new expansion team. It'll be like the old days with him as a Tar Heel. Number 23 coming home. People will love it. A face like Michael will only bring attention to this franchise. This time, though, he'll become an owner. He will buy a minority stake in the team on one condition. He gets complete control of basketball operations. He won't be fired like he did in Washington this time. He would get all the time he would need. They had the 3rd overall pick to play with in 2006, another chance at molding the clay. Who would the Bobcats pick in his first draft at the helm? Adam Morrison. He was often injured and terrible to rest. Now, there will never be confirmation if Jordan had any say in who was drafted that year. His power grab had just become official, and he would never dare admit he was wrong about a decision. That would only be giving Jerry Krause credibility. He still had a chip on his shoulder about that situation, you know. Him admitting fault would merely be saying that his naysayers had won. Why do you think he rarely talks about the Hornets these days? That would be opening him up for criticism. Let me play spoiler for a second. His tenure with Charlotte has been absolutely embarrassing to claim as one's own. Are you ready for a whirlwind of awful moves? Because it's turning like one of Jordan's windmills. Years upon years of bad trades and bad drafting. In 2008, Charlotte would pick DJ Augustine with the 9th pick. Who was selected immediately after? Brook Lopez. 3 years later, they would want a franchise-altering center. They would move heaven and earth, including Steven Jackson and Sean Livingston, to move up to select one man. Bismack Biyombo. He sucked and was gone in 4 years. The 1st-round pick they also gave up for such a prize? Tobias Harris. The next year, they were awful but lost the lottery to New Orleans. With the 2nd overall pick, they'd select Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who would develop into nothing. What did they pass up on? Bradley Beal. In 2015, the Boston Celtics were desperate to get their hands on Justice Winslow. They would offer Charlotte 4 first-round picks to select him 9th overall. This could have possibly included first-round choices from the Brooklyn Nets, and those could be potential lottery picks. But Jordan personally would refuse such an offer. Who did they hold out for? Frank Kaminsky, who would unsurprisingly do nothing in Charlotte. 2017 had the same thing happen. Head coach Steve Clifford was begging them to pick a budding prospect, but they dismissed his pleas. They would pick a flop in Malik Monk instead. Who did Clifford pound the pavement for? Donovan Mitchell. How about the year before, where they traded a late first-rounder for Marco Bellinelli? He'd be gone in a year, but who would they have picked if they didn't get him? Pascal Siakam. Not so easy, is it, Michael? Wait, I'm being too judgmental. What about his decisions away from the draft? How about trading assets, including a first-round pick in 2014 for Tyrese Thomas? Decent backup big man? Not a big deal, you say, but what ended up becoming of that pick? Yusuf Nurkic. How about trading Corey Maggette for Ben Gordon in a first-round pick that same year? Charlotte even got an earlier pick than the one they traded to Chicago. They pissed it away on Noah Vonleh. Gerald Wallace was good for a bit, before he was traded for a mere pittance of his talent. Remember when they brought in Dwight Howard, and then realized he was a cancer and traded him away for an anchor contract? Marvin Williams is decent, so why not grossly overpay him to force him to stay in this hellhole? It's at this point where one would suspect that Jordan is afraid of failure. He doesn't want to tank, even though his efforts have mostly failed miserably to this point, because he still has to prove that he's better than Jerry Krause. Look at the 2016 NBA free agent class. The salary cap is rising exponentially. Despite everyone playing eons over their heads and making the playoffs, it would be wise for the Hornets to sit this one out. Even if Nick Batum had a solid year in Charlotte, he would be grossly overpaid on the market like everyone else. He's useful, but signing him wouldn't make them a true contender. Hold on, just give me 1 second.
I'm about to bust. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the bathroom. Oh, good Lord.
Insanity. $24 million a year for Nick Batum?
Now look, I'm not saying Batum is a scrub. He's a decent role player and swingman, but you overpaid him by at least $10 million per year. You gave him as big of a contract as Harrison Barnes. And that guy was a key contributor to a championship team. Am I supposed to be shocked that his career year was just that? An abnormality. Batum hasn't just flopped, he's become a black hole, which is an unbelievably terrible investment for what is a budget that most businesses would dream for. Don't even ask how he's doing this year, it'll have you begging for NFL-style deals. This leads to the current situation, where the Hornets are locked into a bevy of awful contracts, including that of Kidd-Gilchrist, the second coming of Bismack Biyombo, Marvin Williams, Tyler Zeller, and one Nick Batum. Who does this end up hurting? Kemba Walker. You don't think he's good enough to be the face of your franchise, even though he's been that for years. The Hornets stumbled onto him at the draft and have been reaping the rewards of wasting his talent. He's carried this team through thick and thin, and you rewarded him by insulting his very being. Kemba's been the best player this organization has ever had. And you fucking lowballed him. Am I supposed to be surprised that he went to a team that appreciated his services? You lost him for next to nothing. You'd think that the Hornets would try to reassess their situation, perhaps tank for a chance at a top draft pick, but you don't know Michael. He's afraid of failure. He wants a piece of flesh in return for Kemba. How about a downgrade in Terry Rozier and an overpayment? Look, Charlotte, they won in the end! Aren't you excited for Hornets basketball? You aren't? Oh, you should be with being locked into a cell with those terrible deals they've signed. Now, here's the one thing I have never understood about this whole situation. As a player, Michael Jordan was about greatness. He never settled on anything less than the best for both himself and his teammates. His drive and hunger were legendary. Nowadays, as an owner, he's grown eager to suck on mediocrity's complacent teat. It's not just that he drafts and develops poorly, but like his gambling habit, he triples down on these terrible players and locks them into gross overpayments. He builds the Hornets to be competitive, not a true contender. A perennial 10th place finish in a weak Eastern Conference. This is what Jordan's legacy has fallen to. He's afraid to suck, so he's settling for being forgettable. His time as an executive has flopped harder than his stint in baseball. At least that was temporary. Just like in Birmingham, all he does is strike out. And he will continue to for the foreseeable future. Jerry Krause only laughs up above at his inability to convert his skills to this level. One more thing, LeBron, I hope you're paying attention because this is your future.
Wade wants Kemba Walker to switch on him. Wade leans in, falling away, puts it in! Dwayne Wade does it again! And Charlotte has to call timeout. What a clutch performance from Dwayne Wade.